So after the media breaks the story a little bit, after not caring for well over 3 weeks about what was going on down there, suddenly they need to have marches, they need to have hoodie rallies, they need to do this, this, and this to get justice for Trayvon and all this other stuff without getting any more of the news or the facts or anything like that about what was going on. They come down and, Trayvon was only suspended for tardiness. This young man had never done anything of any sorts to anybody. That's not the case anymore. We now know that that is not the case because new information has came out. The Miami Herald actually yesterday broke out that Trayvon this is not the first suspension. This was one of 3. He was suspended for being tardy multiple times. Another time that he was suspended was when they found him in possession of women's jewelry and a screwdriver while on school premises. He was with some other group of kids who were doing graffiti on someone's locker. When they searched him to see evidence of the graffiti, that's when they found the women's jewelry and the screwdriver, which could be either used as a burglary tool or as a weapon, and anyone knows you were not allowed to have that on school grounds. Another thing that was found at one other time in a different instance, they found a bag that had marijuana residue in it, as well as a marijuana pipe on Trayvon at school. Now, this doesn't mean he's guilty. This doesn't mean he's some kind of thug, some kind of gangbanger, anything like that. This just means that this is not the angelic-faced, 110% innocent kid that everyone's trying to paint him as. I wasn't a 110% innocent kid. Trust me. You can ask anybody. I had my fair share of problems and of doing things wrong when I was young. But the media was trying to paint Trayvon as though, this is this solid A+ student who never did anything wrong. He gets suspended one time for being in the wrong area of a school, whatever that means. And then, he was tardy a few times. That's just not the case. And it hurts Martin's case when you try to deny these types of things. That doesn't make Martin completely guilty or anything like that. But when you try to cover up the real truth behind all this stuff, you're only damaging Martin's side of the case. And anyone would tell you that that's completely true. If you try hiding the truth about things, it's not gonna bode well. The other thing, when it was coming to the pictures of Trayvon they were putting out, they made sure that the picture of George Zimmerman was him and what looked like, in my opinion, to be almost the orange, county jail jumpsuit shirt that he's in, while putting pictures of Trayvon from his, 13 and 14 years old. Another picture, which is the now infamous one with him in the hoodie, I'm putting the link on that one as well. That picture was completely changed. When the Miami Herald ran that picture initially with their story, they ran the regular picture. The site that I'm posting it on, which is Real World View, has both of them, as well as the links to the original, so that you know that this isn't some kind of, whatever. But the picture was heavily edited. Why is that? I didn't look at the original picture and say, oh, look at him, he looks like a tougher boy, he must have done this, yada, yada, yada. It comes back to the whole thing that the more that they try to edit who Trayvon was really, it makes him look less innocent if he was in this whole situation. Why are you trying to cover up facts? It doesn't matter if Trayvon may have looked a little what some would call thuggish. I have plenty of black friends who, look like they stepped off of a rap video. That doesn't make them any worse, better, less, more of a person. It doesn't at all. That's just their style. And when you do things like that to edit who the person was, it just doesn't do any bit of good at all. Another thing that recently broke this morning, also from the Daily Caller, they got a hold of Trayvon Martin's tweets. The Twitter feed was taken down, for a few weeks. It's now back up. Now that these have surfaced, it's been put back up. And the Twitter feed does not paint a normal, scholastically achieving, great kid. There's tons of terrible language in here. There's tons of derogatory things towards women. There's even one tweet where he brags about how late he is every day and things of that nature. Once again, none of this means that he was guilty. What this simply means is that the media has been lying about who this kid exactly was. It just doesn't do anybody any good to try to hide this stuff. I mean, this is, watch an episode of Law and Order. This will be completely relevant to you by the end of that episode, that the more you try to hide from the cops, the more guilty you look in all of this. The other question is the other topic I guess I want to cover is that of Trayvon's parents. One thing, and this is in the actual release that the Sanford Police Department gave out. These are all going to be linked right underneath this video. I did the research. I'm not going to put them all up here, and I'm not going to go directly quoting them and dragging this on out longer than what it is. I did the research. If you want to know the truth, do it yourself. You don't have to dig. I'm putting it all right here. But when they first initially questioned Trayvon's father about the voice calling for help, he said, "No, it's not my son. That's not Trayvon." Well, suddenly when the media frenzy hits and there's all these rallies and support, well, suddenly his dad comes out and now it is Trayvon. That leads to one of two things. Either A, the father wasn't involved enough in the son's life to really know what his son would have sounded like in that kind of an instance, which that doesn't seem to be the case. There's pictures of him with his father and things like that. Or his dad told the truth that night, and suddenly, because that didn't look good for the case anymore, the story was changed. Once again, it just doesn't make it look good. The other thing that really, and this one, I think that everyone on either side should be able to agree on this one. Released yesterday, Trayvon Martin's mother is now seeking to trademark the phrases "I am Trayvon" and "Justice for Trayvon." Now, for anybody wanting to know about or not familiar with trademark, what that means that she's trying to make money off of it. So every time there's t-shirts sold with that, every time there's a song that has that wrote in it, she's going to get a slice of the pie. I have a son. He's almost a year and a half old. The last thing I would care about, had my son been shot point blank in the chest and I believed that he was assaulted completely needlessly, would be about my money. Why does that matter? Why does that matter at all? Can anyone answer me that? She is out there trying, and the trademarks have already been filed, so it's not like she mentioned this. The trademark's been filed. So for anybody who's out there making "Justice for Trayvon" or "I am Trayvon" t-shirts, don't let his mother find out, because she's going to come and she's going to want her cut of that. That just doesn't look good. That, to me, is a terrible picture of a parent. Come on. That's disgusting, in my opinion. Or the fact that, middle of last week, they were already talking about a civil suit against the homeowner association of the complex. Why is it about money? Your son is dead. Your son will never come back from this. Why is it about money? You can always go and write a book. You can always go do all of this stuff, appear on talk shows and everything, and get your money once this whole case is cleared. But within a week of it making real national media attention, the mother is already concerned about a payday off of this. That is disgusting. Now, that has nothing to do with Zimmerman's guilt or innocence or Martin's guilt or innocence or anything like that. I just wanted to point that out because that is terrible parenting. That is a disgusting image of a parent. And if his mother, through some miracle, ever sees this video, I want to let you know that is a shame. You are a shame on every mother in this country, no matter what their race, religion, or anything like that is, that you are so concerned already about getting your hands on the money that's being made off of your son's death, that you've thought more about civil lawsuits and trademarks than you have about really finding out what's going on here. Or the fact that both her and the father didn't know about some of these things going on at school, but yet she can be involved enough to make sure she gets her money off of it. So I'm going to wrap this up. This is when I knew this was going to be a long one. To anyone offended, I'm not sorry. The truth and the facts are right here in links, plain bold. You cannot convince everyone. They're going to sit there and read these things, some people, and be like, oh, well, I don't trust this people. I don't trust the Sanford Police Department. I don't do this, this, or this. That's fine. I didn't make this video to necessarily sway someone from one side to the other. I made this video because there's a lot of emotion going on about this on every side of the racial spectrum, but there's not a lot of investigation going on about this. Like I said, I was shocked when I was looking for a lot of this stuff, and on Yahoo, Google, Bing, Trayvon Martin was not a trending topic. CNN's been basically, they almost ignored the Louisiana primary to cover nothing but Trayvon. Fox News pretty much ignored all of that for Dick Cheney. So why is this not, it's such a big hot button issue, yet people aren't going out there and doing the research. And I just hope, to those of you who are trying to be more level-headed about this and figure out what you really believe, go look for some facts. Quit talking on chat threads. Quit going to, well, don't quit going to YouTube. Quit going to YouTube after you watch this video. But quit going to Facebook. Quit talking to your friends on Twitter. None of you were there. You're not going to get any kind of an actual fact out of anybody. Go look for some facts. I did. You can too. It's not that hard. So in closing, because this is opinionated, what is my opinion on this whole thing? My opinion on this whole thing is, from what the evidence has shown, from what the evidence has shown, Zimmerman seemed to be stepping out of line for a minute by following him. From testimony, he seems to have fell right back in that line once the cops told him, or once the dispatcher told him that he did not need to do that, and he stopped and went back towards his vehicle and was then assaulted. There is an eyewitness who confirms that Trayvon Martin was on top of Zimmerman and was beating his head against the sidewalk. That is where your brain is, people. It doesn't take too many hits to the back of your skull being slammed against a hard concrete surface to do some serious brain damage and to possibly kill you. If that is exactly how it went down, Zimmerman had every right in the world to defend himself. It'd have been I'd be saying the same thing if Zimmerman was black and Martin was white. I promise you that. And for everyone who really knows me, they know that that's not even an issue with me. Zimmerman could have been seriously hurt, and he did what he did. Now, whether or not you believe it had anything to do with race or whatever, that needs to be thrown out the window. The whole point here was there was a kid who was in a neighborhood who was not a resident of that neighborhood. There was a security guard who had problems in that neighborhood of a lot of break-ins, a lot of burglaries, and did not want to see that happen again. Now, he says Trayvon was trolling houses. That's hearsay. We'll never know that. But let's not forget that Trayvon Martin was also found at school with women's jewelry and a flathead screwdriver, which can be used to pop open locker doors, regular doors, anything like that. Does that make him guilty? No. But we have to remember that, because it's going to have to rely on a plethora of information to put this case together. It's not going to be, maybe there'll be some, grand eyewitness that steps forward, and all of what I just said will be thrown out the window because we will know 110%. Until we do, you have to examine all sides of it. You have to look at everything. So you have to keep that kind of stuff in mind. Trayvon was not the angelic youth that he was painted to be. None of us were. I certainly wasn't. It does not make him guilty. But when those on his side and in his support group want to ignore facts to paint a different picture of the kid, you are only hurting your case. It does not matter that Trayvon was caught with that kind of stuff. It doesn't matter that he may have had a rebellious side. It doesn't matter. That doesn't make him guilty of what went on the 26th. It doesn't do any of that. So quit trying to hide facts. Quit trying to cover things up. If you truly believe that Trayvon was innocent of this instance, you need to allow the facts to come out. If the facts come out and paint a different picture, you'll be wrong. I'm sorry. We've all been wrong. But trying to hide truths, trying to cover stuff up will not do anything but hurt the case more. And it's really starting to hurt the case. It really is. And if Zimmerman was completely guilty of manslaughter, second-degree murder, whatever you want to say, you're just hurting Trayvon's case by continuing to hide these types of information and not wanting to talk about it. And when you talk to somebody online who doesn't think Trayvon was innocent in this whole thing, and they've read all this information and you have not, you're just hurting your argument completely. You know, you just need to pay attention to the facts on this. Quit going by your heart. You can't do that by your heart. Is it sad that a 17-year-old kid is dead? Absolutely. It doesn't matter what the race was. It doesn't matter what the sex, the gender, sex is gender, the sexual orientation, the religion, none of it. A kid dead is never a good thing. But if the kid did come and confront him, punch him in the nose and break it, which his nose was broken, and start beating his head against the sidewalk, which he had gashes and lesions on the back of his head, that is, especially with beating someone's head against the sidewalk, that is very life-threatening. And you will pay for that. And you don't know who has a gun on them these days. I'm all for, the Second Amendment, and that's the exact reason. Had Trayvon beaten George Zimmerman's brains out that night, this probably wouldn't have even made a blip. And Zimmerman would be dead, and Trayvon would be another person in prison. My opinion, cut and dry, this is that there's no clear innocent or guilty on this one. I don't believe Zimmerman really did much wrong from what the facts show. He probably shouldn't have gotten out of the vehicle, period. That probably did make Trayvon antsy if Trayvon noticed. But this was a guy who was just trying to do his job basically in the neighborhood. This neighborhood had problems, and he was trying to prevent it again. So I guess my opinion on this would be that the jury is still out, which it is. But my biggest opinion on this whole story is that the media has not been covering this fairly. The media is trying to paint both sides of this story in a completely different fashion as to what we are finding out slowly, day by day, these two men were. And the other opinion I have is that people out there are just jumping to conclusions all over the place, and they're not finding this. This is not an opportunity to go to a rally, to wear a hoodie in church, or to get online and try to be some type of a racial antagonist. This is a man who lost his life, and this is another man who is basically, at this point, lost his livelihood, especially when some idiot like Spike Lee wants to put his address out on Twitter. If anything happens to Zimmerman, I hope him and the new Black Panther Party are brought up on charges for offering reward money for his capture, and then Spike Lee putting that out there. That is disgusting, sickening. So get your own opinion on this, but quit relying on your friends or on the status quo, or just trying to jump on the majority train who just think that that this is what it was reported initially as some type of a racially motivated crime. And you're not going to listen to anything else. You're not going to read anything else beyond that. You're going to read that one news story. You're going to go buy a hoodie. You're going to go get some Skittles and an iced tea, take a Facebook picture, and that's all you're going to do. That is completely irresponsible in this case. One man is dead, and another man is losing his livelihood and could lose his entire freedom if he's found out to be guilty about that. It is worth more than you going on Facebook or Twitter and saying that I am Trayvon, holding up a tea and some Skittles with a hoodie on. that is insanity. That's stupid. That is really stupid. And if you are beyond the age of 16 and doing something like that, that doesn't make any sense. It really doesn't. And this situation is way more serious than that, and it needs to be treated as such. Once again, all of the links to all these stories that I got all this stuff from are going to be posted underneath. I appreciate anyone who took the time to watch this. If you disagree, go right ahead. You can be as vile as you want. You can be as civil as you want. I'm not going to respond to people who are being vile for the purpose of being vile. Anybody wants to have a civil disagreement with me, I'm more than willing to do that. Anyone wants to come on, and get some more info or anything like that, all of my contacts are at the end of this video. I appreciate the time that you took to watch this. And this is a terrible situation irregardless. But in closing, as is the case, I am John, I am opinionated, and I will see you all next time.